Welcome everyone to the final episode of Series 1 of Next Up, the series where I speak to young CEOs, creators and entrepreneurs, those in the know, covering all manner of topics from finance to fashion to tech. Today we have the wonderful Roxie Nafousi, who is a well-being coach. She's a podcaster, she's a writer, and we're going to be talking about the age of the multi-entrepreneur, how young people are balancing multiple careers, social media careers, careers in the office, everything. Well, Roxie, it's such a pleasure to have you. This whole session is on the age of the multi-entrepreneur with loads of Gen Z and millennials now juggling multiple jobs. You're a podcaster, you're a writer, you're a well-being coach, manifesting coach. I mean, you do it all and you also have a family. So I guess, as the world opens up again and lots of young people are now going to be going back into life, back into work and probably managing, multiple work times. How can we manage that stress and stop ourselves from becoming too bogged down and unfocused?
Yeah, I think it's such a good topic to talk about because you are right. I wrote an article recently for Push, which was called Own Your Slash. And it was all about this idea that we are becoming so much more open to being multifaceted people with, how many people watching this, I'm sure, have their main jobs and then have their kind of so-called side hustles, and I think that's great and we should own that. But for sure, we need to be able to manage our stress and our time around it so that we're not just completely drained and burnt out. So I think really for me, it's really about practicing both mindfulness and effective prioritization. So with mindfulness, mindfulness is really about the ability to be 100% present at all times. And I think it's really easy for us to be constantly splitting our focus. So we can be writing an email whilst we're on a Zoom call. We can be, with our children, plus trying to respond to our WhatsApps with our boss. We can be, do you know what I mean? And we can even be at the gym, but thinking about what we need to do at work. And so what happens then is our minds, I imagine all these kind of thoughts and worries and concerns and ideas, they just get completely jumbled. And not only does that block us from being able to problem solve efficiently, it also limits our creativity and, of course, causes massive amount of stress. So any of you will know that split focus makes you feel stressed. It's just that feeling of being so overwhelmed. So the first thing I always advise people to do is start to really understand how they can be more present within everything that they're doing. So when you're writing an email, be 100% writing that email. Focus your attention on it. When you're in the office, be 100% in the office. Then when you get home, and let's say you're doing a different project, be 100% in that. And equally, when you're relaxing, resting, recharging, commit to it 100%. As soon as you start to give all your attention and you focus it to each task in hand, you start to experience life in a completely different way. It becomes fuller, it becomes richer, it actually becomes more enjoyable. So something such as something that you perceive to be boring, let's say doing your invoices, okay, or tax returns, whatever, those things that you just can't stand. They become so much more intense and so much harder when we're doing them under split focus. When we commit, okay, right, I'm going to spend these 2 hours focused attention, 100%, everything off, and I'm just going to get it done. I know I'm going to feel really good afterwards. Even that makes the experience better. It makes it feel better. So really just to start with mindfulness, applying mindfulness. And what you can do is you can also practice meditation. And if you kind of using meditation, it's essentially training yourself to be more mindful. So if you can even start with 2 minutes a day of just being still, you're kind of training your mind to be mindful so that it filters throughout your everyday. And not only that, for anyone that already meditates, you'll know it's often when your best ideas come to you. It's when you're able to allow that space for problem solving to really come about.
Mine's always in the shower or just before bed.
I love
such a good thing, and I'm going to use that as a headline, or I'm going to use that as a feature. When you're saying, you know, switching off, I think a problem that a lot of young people have, I'm a huge, you know, person who does this, is like, my phone's always on. I'm always being distracted. I find it really hard to kind of carve out that time. And I always feel like I have to be doing something to kind of be proving that I'm doing something. Absolutely. And, you know, now that lots of people are genuinely doing multiple jobs or are multiple social media accounts, or even just going back into the world, like, how can we essentially just stop and actually really breathe and just focus in on one thing? Like, I just find it so hard to switch off because I always feel like I have to do something. And I think that's a real problem.
Totally. Look, the pressure is there. And it's this idea that being busy it makes us feel successful. We validate ourselves through how busy we are. But really, we just have to be really honest with ourselves that you cannot do your best when you are stressed and tired and emotionally drained. And just as you charge your phone at night, you have to charge your mind, your brain, your body. And so if you are somebody who is really focused on, you know, you really want to reach your goals, you really want to be really successful in whatever you're doing, you just have to accept that relaxation is actually a part of that process. It's a non-negotiable. It's going to drive you closer to where you want to go, because you're going to be working at a fuller capacity the next day. So almost for some people, it'll just be going, you know what, this is actually me doing something good for my goal. This is helping me reach that goal, and really allocating that time to absolutely recharge and reset. It's non-negotiable.
And when it comes to, you know, setting healthy, manageable goals, I think it's very overwhelming to kind of think of where you're going to be in a couple of years' time. Huge pressures on young people doing exams at university, kind of going to their first job. What are kind of like practical things that like lots of young people can employ to set themselves like feasible, healthy, manageable goals that will still get them to where they want to go, but perhaps not that kind of giant leap of thinking, that horrible question of where are you going to be in 5 years' time, which personally I find very stressful.
Yeah, totally. Look, I think it is really that cliche of that it just takes one step at a time. And so it's really just, you know, you can have a vague idea of where you want to be. And I think that is a good starting point to go, I know that generally speaking, this is the direction I want to go to, but what can I do? Then work backwards. What would I need to do in the next month to get me there? And if I want to get to this place in a month, what can I do today to get me one step closer to there? And I think it really is just going, what can I do for myself today that's going to serve me for tomorrow? And really taking that step-by-step attitude. And to do that, we also have to really rethink our idea of being so rushed. You know, there's always a sense of urgency to get to these milestones or to get to the next stage. And again, it really comes back to, you know, these cliches, which are just so true, of enjoying the journey there and enjoying the momentum. I mean, I remember when I started doing what I was doing, someone who was older than me and more experienced, she said, oh God, you should really enjoy this bit, because this is the fun bit where you're starting and you're exploring and you're coming up with new ideas. And then the responsibility kind of comes down later. And actually, when I look back, and of course, I'm still very much on my journey, but those beginning stages are really fun, and they should be, you know, you should feel that they are really exciting as you progress, and just try not to rush it. Set yourself daily priorities, daily tasks, weekly priorities, and make sure that, you know, at least 1 or 2 days a week, your priority is rest.
Yeah, rest is so important, and it's completely counterintuitive to young culture. And you've mentioned a couple of things already, but what are the beginning signs, perhaps the warning trigger signs that we can look out for, that we can tell that we're essentially leading up to burnout? Or, you know, we can be like, right, we're not going to go out and party with our friends tonight because this is how I feel and I'm recognizing it. How can we start to kind of recognize those inner feelings, basically work on that, which will ultimately make everyone more productive?
Totally. I think, look, we are the majority are young, healthy, fit. We should feel energized day to day. But most people will always tell you, I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. And we shouldn't be feeling like that all the time. So the first thing to do is, if you notice that you're spending every day saying, I'm so tired, I feel really drained, you start to wake up without that kind of zest for life, that kind of wake up, bounce out of bed. Once that starts to go, and little things trigger you into feeling really anxious, that's when you kind of know that you're heading to burnout. So when you're feeling physically drained, you're tired all the time, you're losing the joy, you're actually not finding joy in what you're doing anymore, they're all signs that burnout is definitely on the way. And I think I'll just say, I think you made a really good point about the going out. And I think that is really key, because we do burn the candle at both ends, and like something's got to give. So if your priority right now is you're starting your own career, you're starting a business, or you're trying to get to the finals of these exams, that should be your priority, and focus on that. And that might mean that you change the way that you socialize for the short term. Your priorities can then change. Then you have your exams are done, or you've completed that assignment or whatever. And then actually maybe you can change your priority for that week or 2 weeks or month to actually just being about friendships and going out and, enjoying life. But try not to do both at the same time, because you're just not going to enjoy either to the max.
I mean, I'm definitely someone who's terrible at burning the candles at both ends. It's something I think the pandemic made a lot of people have to really reconsider where they're at with themselves and like how they're leading their lives. And, going into, I think this kind of new normal is definitely something that a lot of people are kind of struggling with. I kind of want to ask you about, a lot of young people will go into their kind of first job, and a lot of people will now start getting tons of jobs. All those, young students have left university, and now as the economy opens up again, they're going to be getting their first job. And quite often, I think people rush into jobs not necessarily loving it. And they might be thinking of starting their own career. Maybe they want to start their own company. Maybe they want to move. What are the kind of signs that maybe you're being quite unhappy in your current job? And kind of what advice would you give for someone who's perhaps a bit scared? They're kind of like, I've done this for a year. I'm not sure how to change, but that's what I really want to do. Like, what's your kind of advice for that? A career change?
Well, I am really, manifesting is something that I talk about all the time, and I live and breathe it. And I know that a lot of the Gen Z and millennials are really on board with it. They know it. They know what I'm talking about. And I really believe that we all should be doing the thing that makes our hearts feel full. There's an industry for everything now. There's a job in anything that brings you happiness. And the best thing you can do, I think, let's say, like you say, you've had a job for a year, definitely take all the value you can from wherever you're at, really understand what you've learned, what you know that you are kind of the working environment that you do enjoy, and maybe what you don't enjoy and what doesn't feel right for you. And you can use all that information to almost create your own vision board of what your dream job is. So you can be like, these are the parts of where I'm at now that I really like, that I want to take with me. And these are the parts that do not fit for me. They just don't feel good for me. And that's a really good thing to know when you can start to get clear on what you want. And then you can start to really, I always say, like, start talking to people, saying this, like, put out there, what your dream job is, because someone will know someone who knows someone, and you'll find opportunities. And when you see an opening, someone tells you about something, just always follow it. Follow the kind of the gift from the universe, which is, these opportunities.
Is it a good thing, do you think, to like write down like what you want to achieve and where you want to go? Like how can people kind of start that journey? Obviously, as you said, like talking about it, I think is quite a big one. I always think once you verbalize something, it's kind of out there. But is it something like, what are the kind of tips? Should we be writing them down? Should we be having some sort of journal? Is it just on your phone? Is it voice notes? Like, how can people start not just, sometimes almost convincing themselves that they need a change? So
I would start with like a little dream job vision board, just writing down, like it can be bullet points, free flowing text, whatever. Just what your ideal job would be, what the ideal salary would be, and how you would feel at work. And I think that's really important, to start to picture how you feel when you go into this job. Like, let's say you imagine yourself waking up in the morning, commuting there, walking in. Are you excited? Do you feel fulfilled? Like, that's a really nice, because we attract the energy that we feel. So you really want to start to get an idea of how you want to feel in wherever it is you want to go. And then, of course, any journey where you get to know yourself better, you'll be closer to knowing what you want to do career-wise. I mean, our careers are a huge part of our lives. We all, I think, are now becoming, whereas before we were kind of told that everybody hates their jobs, right? That was just a thing. It's, of course you hate your job. Everyone does. Like, that's literally, it's like it was expected. And now people are waking up and going, I actually don't need to do something I hate. Like, I can do something I like. So the more you work on any kind of self-development, any kind of self-exploration, you're really going to understand the things that make you happy. And then really researching, what jobs can I do within those things that make me happy?
There's always this sense of, I guess, like instant gratification, whether it comes through our jobs, through being with our friends, through starting your own company. But I do think there's this element that we kind of want everything very soon. Like, how can we stop frustration that you're not going to get necessarily what you want instantaneously? And I think with like TikTok culture and Instagram culture, again, I think I'm someone who's particularly bad at this. Like, you want those likes, you see that person with that great job, and like envy really is the kind of killer of all joy. And how can we essentially stop our frustration and just be like, trust in the process. I'm going to go through a career change, or I'm going to get through these exams, and essentially not have that stress of stressing, like before.
Yeah. Look, it takes practice, I think. It's just really, firstly, just making that decision and going, do you know what? I need to surrender to the journey of life a little bit. And, I said this to you so many times the other day, like, life is for living. So live. So really just really bring yourself back to the now. Like, every time, it's really good to have intentions, to have goals, but always to just come back to the now. What joy can you find in your life right now? Knowing where you want to end up, that's great. If you know where you're headed, incredible. But how can you find gratitude in where you are now? And when you have gratitude for all that you already have, it's very hard to simultaneously be stressing about the future, because you're like, hey, do you know what? What's coming is coming. I'm excited for that. But also where I'm at now is really good. And that's but you have to just practice that attitude. We have to almost retrain our brains to focus on the good. And it's absolutely possible because of neuroplasticity, which is our brain's ability to form new pathways. So get into that gratitude mindset.
So I guess my kind of final question is if we're practicing this, what are the kind of signs then that we're actually living a more like fulfilled, I guess, like real life? Or how will we know? Is it because we're just going to feel energized all the time, or we're going to feel motivated? What are the signs that we're at least kind of on that journey in a positive way that like young people should look out for and be like, okay, I'm doing all right, and I can have this?
I love this question. So I think it's a few things. The first thing is when you notice that you've handled something differently to how you did before. That's a really good sign. You're doing well. So something that may have really stressed you out before now doesn't. That's a really good sign. When you feel that you've lost that sense of urgency and you're able to, let's say, be at the park with your friends or out at restaurant, and you're just there. You're not worrying about what's happening in the office or with your exams. You're just there. Similarly, when you're able to be doing something work related, that you're not also mindlessly scrolling, or you're not also trying to talk on the phone to a friend, but you're actually just, when you're adopting that more mindful approach. But I think really one of the greatest things is that you're able to feel a sense of peace and calm and grounding. And that's a really empowering place to be, when you're just like, yeah, things are good. I'm happy where I am. That sense of calm. And I think for I can only speak from experience, but I definitely didn't think that was a really attractive place to be. I was like, I don't want to be calm. I want to be like high. Like I want
exactly.
these big highs all the time.
Life, baby.
Yeah. So it's cut, but there is finding like peace and contentment is really quite amazing. So don't shy away from it. It doesn't always have to be these like major highs and major lows. There is a middle ground, which also feels really good.
The consistency that we can all achieve. Well, I love that. And thank you, Roxie, so much. That was great. And I'm sure a lot of people will find that really useful with everything that's going on in the world and how to move forward. So a huge thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Again, everyone, a massive thank you for joining. I hope you've enjoyed Series 1 as much as I have enjoyed presenting it. And make sure you stay tuned for Series 2.